Shall we begin?
Radan nadan chive lapchule sive sole provar. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, completely perfected, fully awake in being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, a supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who are wise in, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the vast Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, colored like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous action. Perform only perfect virtuous action. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits, may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death. Rabje Baru to Simba Samo Cheba Nila Nambar Tashi Kumbo de Da Laya Ranji Tomba Nambar Tao Tene Zanji Gitu Sedan Demba Sharifu Janju Semba Semba Jumbo Baba Cherezi Wanju Tike Chemeso Sharifu Gana La Shiraki Baru to Simba Samo Cheba Choba Doba De Sita Lapar Cha Tike Chemepada Janju Zemba Zemba Jimbo Baba Cherezi Wanju Tedan Demba Sharata Debola Tike Chemeso Sharifu Rigibu Mo Kanala Sherabi Paruzo Chimba Samo Cheba Choba Doba De Namba Tower Chade Kumbo Mabo De Dalaya Rashiki Tomba Number Yanda Pa Chesu Tao Tomba Tomba Nizuzo Tomba Shemayan Tomba Nile Jansu Shemayan Eshindu Sorodan Dushidan Dujidan Number Sheba Nam Tomba Sharibu Deda Chudam Je Tomba Nide Tsini Meba Mageba Maga Tima Meba Tima Dan Jawa Tima Meba Kama Meba O Sharibu Deda Wena Tomba Nila Sume Sorwa Me Dushi Me Dushi Name Name Sheba Mime Nawa Me Name Chime Bume Ime Sume Chame Chime Rume Reja Me Chume Do Mege Kame Bane Ije Kame Ige Nambara Shebe Kanki Bado Yame Do Mariba Me Mariba Seba Me Gashi Me Gashi Sebe Bado Yame Do Ejindo Dunga Wada Kunjum Wada Kobana Tame Yeshim Koba Me Mado Baya Me Do Shari Bota Dawena Janju Semba Na Toba Mebe Sharaji Barudu Jimbala Tenji Nede Samachi Bamechi Traba Mede Chinje Lole Shindo Dene Baru Chimbo Yuzundo Number Shube Sanje Tanji Yang Sharaji Barudu Jimbala Tene Lana Meba Yanda Wasobe Janju Moba Zoba San Jeso Tedavana Sharaji Barudu Chimbe Nga Rigwa Chimbe Nga Lana Mebe Nga Minyamba Nyambe Nga Tunge Tanje Radu Shivar Chebe Nga Mizumena Demba Sheba Jale Sharaji Barudu Chimbe Nga Kayata Gade Gade Para Sangade Buddhisto Yaribu Chanju Samba Samba Chambu Deda Shiragi Baruto Chambu Samola Lapar Shao Tene Chumde Tengi Chanju Samba Samba Chambu Baba Jeneze Onjula Leso Shechawa Jene Leso Richi Bu Dede Shindo Dede Sharaji Temba Shindo Chiragi Baruto Chambu Samola Chebra Chade Sheba Nambia Jesu Gira Yonten Dege Jeka Tene Setan Demba Shere Tati Buddha Janju Samba Samba Jimbo Baba Shere Tembe Kuru Jada Dan Hata Medan Hama Yidan Tesa Jebe Jiten Yiran De Jomden Dege Sumba Telo. Thus I have heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Vulture's feet, together with a great assembly of monks and Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, called profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, how should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, O Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formations, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the essence, no spheres of the mind. There are no these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these all the way up to there is no old age and death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. Because there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond. And because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. While the Buddhas who dwell in the three times, by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra that calms all suffering should be known as just truth, for there is no suffering. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. Oh, Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of the family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering and the world with its gods, men, anti-gods, and spirits, their hearts full of glory. Here's the words of the Blessed One. So is the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond.
뭐야, 나들이 나서 사고를 생각, 다 전주 그다 차리 어쩌다가 전주 그다 된다 가정하고 요숨 시에서는 요숨 되나 아니 가르쳐 삼바 부준 저거 찬주고 저도 샘께 봐서겠다 찬주초도 샘께 양아들 요 당고 숨도 시거다 이게 가서 시에서 해서
Now it is Thursday and we resume the way of the Bodhisattva. Our Thursday topic is the way of the Bodhisattva. The way of the Bodhisattva's first 3 chapters we have completed. These are 3 chapters designed for the development of the sublime mind of enlightenment where it has yet to arise. We have concluded these 3 chapters.
얘가 요 당고 가서 편식 요 니바 가서 삼다 튠지 소사바 아니 요숨바 가서 다 장주쌤 깨봐 다 장주쌤 말씀도 당고 쌤지 아니 장주쌤 또 몰라야겠다 예전에는 가서 다 삼바 부중 소바 써야겠다 삼바 부중 소바 장주기 쌤 생각이다 그게 랑이 당고 깨봐 예전에는 가서 가서 요숨 그다음 사상 시에 차가래서
The first chapter describes benefits of bodhicitta. The second, the drawing together of supportive conditions for its arising. The third, the development of the mind of enlightenment in aspirational form, and then the subsequent vows. It is the sublime mind, bodhicitta, and these 3 chapters are for its development.
다 장주쌤 게 찬다 내가 여마를 내가 저바를 했으니까 내가 저여 맞다 장주쌤 게 찬 아니 게 차버다 마냐바 송어 집에 탑 마냐바 송어 집에 탑다 저 무슨 소발라고 저 무슨 소발을 라베야겠다 아니 치돌라다 요 바바숨디 아니 다저 무슨 소발을 라베야게 합시야게 다요 바바숨들에서
With the arising of the mind of enlightenment, then is our work done? Are we complete in our practices? Certainly not. What remains is the preservation, the protection of that mind that has arisen so that it does not falter. And so then the middle sections of the way of the Bodhisattva, the 3 middle chapters, the sublime implementation or execution of the mind of enlightenment.
나도 장주쌤 깨고야 장주쌤 가르치는 깨봐래 아니 깨니 가르치고래 세다 저와 디나는 어서다 이제 저도고요레스 그래서 이제도마다 다다 공도다 시에 차가게 장주쌤이 배운 장주쌤 유래기야 예전서야 튀긴도야 아니 장주주도 쌤 깨봐 되게 디 차네다 다다 라바 장주쌤 깨봐 되게 마냐바 송알라 때니 아니 장주 첨부 루버 장주 첨부를 두고 장주 첨부 루버 제발라 아니 다 아니 내가 남기 라바숨라 마냐바 라바 제야디 아니 어떤 냠네 다 장주 셈바 라발라 라비야기 아니 주주 냠네 제 고고들에서
These aforementioned 3 opening chapters of the way of the Bodhisattva, describing the benefits of bodhicitta, the removal of obstacles or obstruction to its arising, the drawing together of supportive conditions for its development, and then its actual arising. When this has all occurred, then what has been achieved must be extended and protected and guarded so that the great mind of enlightenment remains. And to this end, then, one executes or implements the mind through the 3 higher trainings as a form of practice. The opportunity then is upon us for the execution of the mind of enlightenment.
좋지. 단 라바숨 달 남기 라바를 랍세 라바데 수 뒤에 저는 라바숨이야를 라바스름지 라바 땡행지 라바 시라기 라바 서다 냠네 상말로 대숨구나 뒤에 냠수랑 것이 지구야래서
3 higher trainings contain within them all trainings in their entirety. They summarize all trainings into these three categories of the higher training in ethical discipline, the higher training in mental concentration, and the higher training in wisdom.
좋습니다. 근데 인도에서마다 라바순가 라비아 장주 셈백이다. 나도 탄다. 또 대과침 비추 이난에 장주 셈바. 람라 라비아겠다. 장주 셈 깨네. 안 줘봐라 라네. 야다. 장주 첨부 고번 토비아게 람라 누구이와 인도 안 라비아게 남들라 버진 주스. 버진 주스 장대. 버진 주스 장주 잠바다. 버진 하나도 되게 장대야. 버진 투기 예바로와 집안에 시시 시럽지 걸지고 받아 버진 투기 예바지. 네 강라야 버진 시리 가르면 것은 탑기 버진 식세. 아니 멀럼기 버진 식세. 사지 사두바 탑기 버진 사데 사이 버진세. 되네 또 사고가 또 버진세. 근데 사주바 이 시지 버진서 버진 주고도 상으로 해서 말이지.
Then the training in the mind of enlightenment is the very training of the heirs to the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas. It is the training of the Mahayana Dharma. Within the Mahayana Dharma are these Bodhisattvas in their training. They are engaged actively in their training, the mind of enlightenment having arisen in them, and they are proceeding to Mahabodhi, the great mind of enlightenment. We speak of 10 perfections, and of course there in the 10 paramitas are the 6 that we ordinarily enumerate. First, generosity, and then the rest up to the pragya paramita, the wisdom paramita. In addition to these 4, rather, in addition to these 6, there are an additional 4, the paramita of method, the paramita of aspiration, the paramita of power, and the paramita of primordial wisdom. So we've just counted out 10, these additional 4 being the paramita of method, aspiration, power, and primordial wisdom. These 4, last counted, may also as well be condensed into the 6th paramita, the pragya paramita.
Oh, yeah. But I'm not change you could up party 10 or up, but you find 10 or do, and it's a party. I don't want to look my shadow, lose somebody, Jibe party in the middle shadow in the China, Jibe party, Chiondo, Luke and Gana, share what is. And using very much of Chitang, Chishito, Chen, Sanju, Jibe party in the Chishito, and not share what is. But in it, Lu Tanang to share Shimba, Lu Shiba, and other Castle, so Karishia was not any Churunji person, share what is. Churunji person, so Tanang Lunga Becasola, Shishin Shiglo, Shishin, Tembata Shishin says, oh, the Zuganga, the Chujum Dan, Jim, that the Shishin Zuki, and Chidan Chawata, the Chiba, you Indu, and Chujum, Shishin, Mingi Dan, and the Shijak response.
We list the paramitas beginning with generosity. And in fact, the 3rd chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva is dedicated to or focused upon generosity. However, generosity is an overarching topic across all the chapters of the Way of the Bodhisattva. It is a general explanation ongoing through the chapters, whereas the 4th and the 5th chapter, the ones we have arrived at now, are especially concerned with ethical discipline. The 5th chapter, vigilant introspection, in a way has been given the title, vigilant introspection. It might just as well be called ethical discipline. This ethical discipline is the topic of vigilant introspection.
Oh, yeah. That's in Pardin Hamad Digiti, and that you must sell a mad load to Bollidu, Seville Wuta, and imagine it. Share Sunday, low share of the Wuto Sponge and Koran Pardin Hamadi, and then lose Hamadi Sponge and things. Putting sponge and them,
The chapters then that follow in the text, the 6th chapter is concerned with patience, the 7th with mental concentration, the 8th with, or rather the 9th with wisdom, and so on, proceeding through the rest of the paramitas.
Oh, yeah, that and I'm not shaking below the Payugi Lucido. She was Payugi Lucy, the Payudi, and that Chidan Payu, that's not most Payudi, and that Pajin Adamazuta, Junjuta in Bainata, the Pajin to Yamena, Kara in Bainaya, Payudi, and Konzuka gets out of what's in Ganga Pet K Church. Ganga Yamlengi Nalaya, Zawato, and Gugu Yubashin and Ingres homes.
We have arrived at the chapter on conscientiousness. It is the chapter of conscientiousness or carefulness. Generally, conscientiousness or carefulness underpins all practice of the paramitas, whether it is practices described in the way of the Boddhisattva or elsewhere. Conscientiousness is an underpinning or a foundation for all practices.
Oh, 제가 봐요 때문에 아니 봐요 디 아니 지당 다 대관 멤버다 대관 첨부 강가 탐색이다 또 그런 연도 대관에 이제 나가 도지 대배 도지 참 고방에 벌도를 강가로야다 봐요 디배 예 첨부 봐요 디 녀버도 송구요 봐 마송나 만지 법에 간다 남기냐면 탐색 봐요 송하다 라래 오 대체 아니 제벌도 나가도 다 준비를 사람이 시작하자 보시면 훨씬 좋으냐면은 네버도 아니 아유디 개침 보이 봐. 어딘데 땡그래요 손을.
Where conscientiousness is employed, it is employed everywhere in the foundation vehicle and in the great vehicle of the Mahayana. From the Shravakas on through those proceeding to the state of Vajradhara, conscientiousness is indispensable. It must be practiced. Everything depends upon it. And especially in the way of the Bodhisattva, concerned with the 6 paramitas, everywhere here too, it is indispensable and absolutely critical.
어, 다 근데 이게 때마다 다니어도 퍼진 주스나를 두탕이나라 개발야마라 하다고 퍼진 주장도 타마시디 시진남스 뒤가 다 두를 쉐바이는 두지도 때마다 두디 아니 냠내치도 라바스미 냠내남스 뒤니 냠슬랑으로 와 이제 때마다 같이 오르스나 방보숨 진배 퍼지 주름지 퍼지 세배 퍼지 숨버디 아니 라바 추름게 라베나 요거래 손스 아니 삼대기 버진디 아니 라바 땡게지 라바나 다 셔럽이라 뭐다 실진디 아니 라바 셔럽 라바나 그래서 라바 숨나도 어떻게 하면 나오나 해서
Sunju?
손주 디 콘도 강가기 이 냠내기 강가로 나 시대진도
Whether we count 10 paramitas or 6 paramitas, it doesn't make a particular difference. For when we count 10, the final 4 might just as well be counted in the 6th paramita, the pragya paramita. When we count 6 paramitas, these 6 paramitas themselves have their complementary higher trainings. We speak of 3 higher trainings. The paramitas of generosity, ethical discipline, and patience fall into the category of the higher training in ethical discipline. Mental concentration, the paramita mental concentration, falls into the category of the higher training in mental concentration. The paramita of energetic discipline is shared in all the 3 higher trainings. And the 6th paramita, the pragya paramita, falls into the category of the higher training in wisdom.
Oh, 준비돼 있어. 다이 제가 다시 공도 당도 시야나 시진. 다 되고 순간에 간다 람 간듯이 냠슬랑 그거 예나야. 당아서 바유 밤에다 바유 세그러다 바유 바생이 아니 람기다 또 뭐게 이내라 냠슬 가르다 람 숭기 뭐이나자 람 고는 백이 뭐이나자 간다 바유디 녀벌도 개침고 이봐. 이 나네다 소더기 동바탕 아니 다나 동바 퍼진 쪽이 냠내다 볼라 네버 바유 마소나 아니 람다 송메투바다 람피아 페마투바 어디데 이두잠바 아니 바유디 다 나가게 짜와다 이세기 균생이 어디지 레소
Now, as has been said, across the 3 vehicles of the foundation vehicle, the Mahayana, and the secret Mantrayana, whichever vehicle is practiced, the practice will be either one of negligence or of conscientiousness. Everywhere, conscientiousness is indispensable to the protection and securing of commitments and to the furthering of realization. Where it flags, negligence interferes with this. It is indispensable in the maintenance or the upholding of the pratimoksha vows, to the upholding of the secret mantrayana vows, and to the furthering of the 6 paramitas. So it is said then, for these reasons, that conscientiousness is the very root.
내게 개침부체 바유 세르네 바유 숭세 바유 람파게 세야겠다 숭당 개발돼 숭에 더 숭다 고슴 줘봐 숭고 그래서 고슴 류가이 숭 고슴 여러 있어다 류가 예수님 고슴 숭에 되래 나 류가 예수님 고슴에 되라야 나조 셈지 숭고 셈 마송나 아니 류가지 줘봐 숭 마투와 셈지 수야고 숭아이나 아니 롱아지 줘봐 송투야 윤두 삼아 조디 아니 셈 바유 치고 셈 송아지 조 아니 이 송아이나 류다마게 줘봐 송투고 요봐 아니 줘봐 송아를 내 하와 요봐 류징아도 줘봐 송된 셈이 줘봐 마 송아이나 아니 다 롱아게 줘봐 송아야 거미 줘봐 데데데 고생 오래 했어
Tama dela karisang bay? De karisa.
셈 롱아지 줘봐 주고 송 셈이 바유 맞다 맞지 셈이 밤에 때 뭐 이나야 롱아지 줘봐 송 투야 탑시 송을 그 되게 가도 거쳐 말해서
Conscientiousness is then critical, and the maintaining of conscientiousness. How is it done then? It is done through guarding body, speech, and mind. The 3 doors are through which our conscientiousness proceeds, always through these 3 doors, body, speech, and mind. But principally, it is the mind that directs body and speech. Without conscientiousness of mind, there will be no following of the body and of speech. So the mind is critical, and the mind must be conscientiousness, must be conscientious. Where it is not, then physical action and speech too will be negligent. But where it is present, body and speech will follow suit ably and easily.
딱, 这个 때문에 좀 되지 그런 것도 가리나 지금 나라 간다다 방송 디세저다 방송 쪽에 내다는 삼벨 내다 루가레스 그다음에 여버리 좀 되게 간다다 송나데라 삼바 바유 송와지다 아니 루가지 줘 바유 또 얘기 바유 송하다 아니 루가지 바유 송와 이 여버리 제가 되게 송고 여봐 이제 아니 디나네 다스 한자 이기 샘송한테 조제 루가지 내 송한테 아니 또 맞다다 예세오라다 샘리 바요지 야고 송와 있나 아니 루가 송 투기 여봐 샘리 마송와 지와이나 루가 줘봐대 송 투기 매봐대 어디에 송 여러 송스 어디 가야 돼 참.
The Bhagavan spoke a sutra, the particular sutra I cannot recall, but the Bhagavan spoke thus: Rishis, intention of the mind is conscientiousness, and there is conscientiousness too that is physical and verbal, thereby classifying conscientiousness into the mental and then the physical and the verbal. Where mental conscientiousness is absent, then physical and verbal conscientiousness is impossible.
삽삽 쳐버렸다. 장롱도 보지. 배당도 진짜 롱바지를 줘예나. 안 배켜. 왜 수도도 삽삽 쳐야. 아니 지 근데 납치적으로 장롱 쳐야스. 이 가지는 있다 삽삽 쳐야세. 다 가르 삽삽 치고 그러스나. 그래서 완전 샘버 통보 chen 그게 바위 치고 납치적이 여러 와서.
동대그로 와.
동대그로. 다 간다 수수 그게 그중 잠바다 랍지 잡예니 뭐네 네 최배진 프로페스 답섭치고다 장롱치고다 랍지 좀 당겨로 와 수주가 저도 답섭진 누구로 왔어 일단 뒤뒤 잠바 수주고다 안도 수수로 송ገብ치고 열와 제가 송ገብ치야 되라다 바유세 안도 바유세네 바유다는 무엇이면 열어 무엇이나 빼자고 이래서
And ordinarily, when we travel, when we have projects, and there's another person observing, and they wish us well, they'll recommend that we proceed in whatever it is, traveling to a new place, engaging in a new undertaking, to do so with care, to be careful. This means then to be guarded and alert. And so as we go, as we proceed, we do so always alert and protecting ourselves. And so conscientiousness is to be with some conscientious. This is a rough description of what one has when one is proceeding with that instruction, to be careful.
제가 뒤에서 그 삽삽 맞지봐 이나 아니라 라보다 네 쇼로 발로 소바 되게 강해 치기래 아니 랑을 빼 쇼로도 삽삽 맞지봐네 랑을 치기 룡알 너바 거리나 용시기래 되게 라스비 고고 쇼바다 갑자기 쇼로 소바 되게 용으로 왔다 되게 강을 송고 열어왔어 그래서 송이야 치고라 아니 가서 배 강아 그리고 반대 룡하게 샘라이 샘게 송고래 룡하지 송고도 왔어 제 배티낭시 당하라서 단단하라서 딱 쉬시 이거 좀 쉬시가 냠내지도 다 가래스나 코와 네 미수되라 코하게 당하라서 코에게 하게 딱 코와를 줘봐다 되네 딱 정규 첨부 살아야 타는 뭐 남도 누구요 순대인데 당하라서 들려 어디 좀 많이 샘 남도 온도 마셔 봐 송고야 다 들려 송아스 들려는 송이야 될 고순 이거는 송고요 봐도 송단데 lakpa sungla changada masuna gosung kono sungo sungdan den spe kota kosem di maywa zung sap jine o de jine ani sung bu yu bai zan ko la phayu chi sa ta da de ji sam ta o re ko
When one is careless, then one risks losing things, having things stolen from them, and meeting with problems as they go. The problems may well be physical. One may be cheated. One is defending oneself and guarding oneself when one proceeds carefully, conscientiously. The mind is guarded and defensive, protecting body and speech too. And in the Mahayana Dharma, as one practices to extricate themselves from the situation of cyclic life, for liberation from the bondage of cyclic existence, and to mount those Boddhisattva bhumis in their training, it is an ongoing process of defending the mind against discursive thought that harms through the three doors, through body, speech, and mind. The mind remains defensive and undistracted, limiting discursive thought.
다 세상 바유 다 맞아 빼나 바유기 저버디 마송아 이나 아니 다 가르치기래 살면서 저거 들어와다 가르치는 바유가 저거래 아니 밤에 오도 저나 가르치기래 어떤 선배나다 저디 요구여스 세상 다 맞아 밤에 봤다 바유백이 딱 봐도 도저디 아니 밤에 봤어 들어 밤에 제봤어 답변은 아주 지대나는 가서 질러 봐도 심도 셈 수수 공격 맞아버지 로이나 라나 밤에 온도 쇼어 밤에 온도 쇼어이나 랑기 주노라 너바 용거를 너 라바 퍼와 쳐봐 용거와 아니 랑기 룰레이나 너바 아니 지금 미고 와로 쇼바 가가지고 용거도 하잖아 미고가 또 아유 저바 맞대 밤에 온도 쇼어가 있는 년가도 용거도 왔어 이 여반 나시 다당아도 디버친도 남나 단주고 셈께 장주고 셈께 차바 이나야 먼저 내 당보래 예산에 셈 많이 안 봐 용거래 셈 저발 롬도 로버 근데 용거로 와서 다 근데 모양이 치도라 아니 다 이제 버진 쪽에 냠내 장주 셈 저발 로버라 아니 봐 여봐서 예 버도 보고 여봐 밤에 그 집에 오도 줄바 있나 아니 다 장주 셈 로버도 배 랑게 줄라 째봐서 송마토바 아니 봐 자주세 라바라 아니 로바라 내가 로바 어디에 여기 열어서 네 마야 지금 선 송화선 시라 개점 시기 열어서 손으로
In conscientiousness, illuminated too as its opposite, negligence. What will negligence be and entail for us? This will occur to us. What should we anticipate if we fail to be conscientious? The opposite of conscientiousness is negligence, to be neglectful. We know such people who cannot control their minds, so much so then that they lose whatever they've gathered in wealth, and sometimes to find themselves harmed by others. This is the result of their neglect. Now, in the practice of the Mahayana Dharma, we who have just now developed the mind of enlightenment have developed this mind, but are still beginners and might lose what we have gained, or might be turned around as we proceed. And so then in the training in the paramitas, this conscientiousness underpinning our training is indispensable. For if we are negligent, if we neglect, for instance, the Bodhisattva vows, then they may be lost. And so it is, conscientiousness is so critical.
Oh, yes. More than that, and the condition of the pa member, the pa you, pa member, Nimi, pa you buggy, pen, I give you a watch motion, but that and then I just did. Junju, Java, Shimbana, the day, pa you, the pa make it, some of them, the shit. Mambo yore, then I just had the basic dishes on China, and it did that Shiva rocks rest in this Jaggy or else.
This is a rough sketch of conscientiousness and its benefits, and negligence and its great disadvantages. In the commentarial tradition, these are dealt with at great length, but here we just sketch them out roughly.
Oh, that cousin, the animal without the moment to the change that the Tamaticadula. And it that was Chanju same with that. Payogis, same Tamodilla bed, the Shibagi Payogi, the Usumbajanis, Chanju same soon at the share, Payog, the same soon at the share. That same soon, Chanju same gave about the soon. That's soon as soon Maze and the coke carjona. Tabachos, use them go under Gumasho up it. Gun never chogorwa, easy to learn shishing. Lunga bag shishing the shin of Boris. That in a low to but by Yabatugi, and it that Karchigorsna. Ya pale, that's a use them to bed. Goose. Ye, my neighbor said, then a pingmar of Hanakoya shoot your down or peg or tamet, the parodus, Tarchuva Chogorwa, Chedan Chiva Chiva, Peva Chogorwa. All the bear chela and you to make Yabazo, so some use of the on the pair, Tactic is only your resume.
Several weeks ago now, in what was the final class then, we described Boddhisattva having arisen, not being enough left as merely arisen, but needing to be sustained deliberately. Thus, the importance of the fourth chapter, conscientiousness. Conscientiousness, a means for protecting and preserving the mind that has arisen. In addition, for the preservation of the mind of enlightenment, vigilant introspection that keeps guard to ensure that there are no faults or transgressions occurring. This too is for the purpose of preserving the mind of enlightenment. However, mere sustaining of the mind of enlightenment is not enough. It too must be furthered and intensified. So the topics of the 6th, 7th, and 8th chapters for the increase and furthering of the mind of enlightenment
Yes. But then the said that I Manzu Tanda to Carson Tambo Ale Pa Yubata, Pa Mabas, and he forget motion budget, but I'm motion budget, she had catching yours, but I'm to Nimur Sashavana. I want to never remove to motion budget. What a motion budget, and a motion Sasona, and a culture was not a polaya. Motion San and a call it up, Pardo, Nimbut Tension. 뭐 리모트 따다 그 가자 그림바다 빵제도 빵제도 모조리 세우죠. 아래서 봐도 볼 때니 뭐 간데스 때문에 니모 때문에 캐봐. 니모 때문에 캐봐. 한테는 니모 때문에 아니 다만 가르쳐서 딱 보면 쉬면 봐. 다만 거기에 민기 하마전도 결과서 배 간다 주는 자원을 봐. 제주는 봐. 니모들이 주는 자기 줄 줘야면 뭐 자원을 제 명점에 봐 매봐 쏘아 치고 답지적으로 오 드디 치야겠다 냠내 치야겠다 아니 제약이 영향을 탄다는다 아 여봐서게 돼 예벌도 고고 여봐 오 드디 표현이 시험을 고고 그래서 무슨
That's then the long and short of it. Conscientiousness versus negligence. We introduce ourselves to the difference, to gain an impression of their significance, just as we do when thinking of the kleshas, the mental afflictions. First, we gain our impression of them so that we may apply the antidote to them through implementation of practices to adopt and rejection of those that ought to be discarded. And then we grow proficient in this, ultimately so proficient in this that the mental afflictions are entirely uprooted, so much so that the very word klesha itself is no longer relevant to us. The name itself disappears. Thus, we introduce ourselves to conscientiousness as well.
Oh, yes. That is the one of the same song. They said that same song said that same song down. And this song is that same song down. That's Lunga is some job of song. He none Lunga job of song less, same job of song, the catch or same job of most of the Lunga job of song to Mare said that. And they song down that song to somebody. Take back a was to orders and the china. Some of now Chigamet to read a job with the content fingers and they paying master. Was some soon said it, and Suzuki Nimachi. Now to Nimachi on Projagi to Saw in it, never in a draw in it, and it's some Lotanga in a Kari in a young Kari Rangi Chigi in a young, the Zuganga, and a Machaba, and a Shetan Meba, Timu Meba, Hado Meba, Naje Meba, oh, the legit two ina. And that some soon said that charging Tangi or Resons.
That familiarity with conscientiousness would be then familiarity with how one guards through conscientiousness and what one guards. One guards activities of body, speech, and mind. Within these three doors of action, mental activity is most important of all. But in our conscientiousness, it isn't the goal to become excessively dogged, excessively persistent in an oppressive state of mind always, but rather to proceed recognizing that in all that we do, when we are rising and in motion, when we take a seat and go to sleep, when we eat, when we reflect, whatever we do, so long as we do those things where no ignorance, no aversion, no desirous attachment, no jealousy, and no envy is allowed to creep in to contaminate these activities. Insofar then have we maintained conscientiousness.
Oh, and then the other Nemo, that same Sunago, the thing was been the patient. When you move the motion, but you were and a part of you would thank you. Come on, go by you, but like to my give a sound of which much over the schedule, depending on the something in the Susan never genius. And when a command was Chashagina, Mukumati, motion by Chora, Kuma Komoiva, Kuma, the motion that called Yunguduna, or Takuma less of the cook name Kumaja, Kuma never jiggle somebody. And when a could never came much, Tradichura, never going good enough for you, Lamsa, but now come what is the combat of Gonzo, Jibunza Jam, or Sunjab Chura, for your Yoma to us over or Dinashi. Or better, I didn't call command motion, they level to the chance on any call and you let it on you, I am never near Toba Lava in that Yaman Suzu Baking that done on the Karicina Copet, Helen Karichichu, Chichugua, or Tina Chevati, and then Hama, that Nimus saw on the and you never came out here, like Magia, Tapshet, or this would never show us, or Tina Sing down around to the bed, Bedina in Chakane. Around Nimoti, Namdoti, a bed Namdo Tigi Wangi, and around the Lopeta. Tamu Namdo the washing budget, Namdo Tigi around taking the Namdo the Imba washing budget. And Tigi Namdo Telatai, Kalesi Nimutemoto. 남도디 용비서 뭐 멋있는 간데시고도 콜레스는 간데스 가까워도 어디 탑시 시험을 제어디 아니 나 탑시 시험을 제발라야다 당어서 단다 중중나지 제발이나 아니 다 다음에 또 하동 다음에 또 하동 줄지 이거 번째 되게 좀 저거로 와 어디 이 못된 캐바지 나 뒤에 다음에 또 시럽지 공부를 때냐 하겠다 맞아 동네라에 깨면 유모도 깨면 서버이나 아니 그 예박 강가 싸워는 통충으로 와 어디로 삼았다고 해서 마무 참
Maybe in the case of the klesha and how we identify them and grow familiar with them, it would be useful to use an example. For the process is to familiarize ourselves with the klesha, the mental afflictions, so that we may have a target for the application of an antidote to the mental afflictions, so that in the end, the mental afflictions are entirely deracinated, uprooted completely. So let's take the example of a thief. When we are able to identify a thief, then when this identified person arrives, we identify an arriving thief. We say the thief is arriving and is soon to steal then, so we had better close the doors and windows and protect our belongings. If we are unfamiliar and haven't identified the thief, there's no such defense. So it is then identifying the mental afflictions. We identify the mental afflictions so as to prevent them from causing us problems, and we do so decisively to not allow, to prevent them from arising in us. So it is, so then the mental afflictions are like this thief, but so too are discursive thoughts like this thief. We must identify discursive thoughts and understand that discursive thinking too is problematic. How is it problematic? How does it harm us? In the way of the Bodhisattva, special insight, a special insight into the absence of the ostensible self. This is the understanding that prevents discursive thought from causing us harm, the harm that it would otherwise cause us. So too, we will eliminate mental afflictions through the understanding of the absence of the ostensible self, and where the mental afflictions no longer arise, then too, there are no sorrows that could arise.
Oh, that's that you do not niman that men some do some jeba the sungore, Manyaba Chegore, Manyaba Cheg Sungu, we all said that soon a chebalata, not doing magic. Suzuki. Kala Sagi, you were in a young Machaba, Shadameba, Timumeba, Najeme, when that says our draw in a young, and you remember that Machaba, the Shadameba, and then Najeme, Timumeba, and it's Bagas, around the leg, her chicky, you were in the gate Samalo, and it's Chaba Meba, Machaba, Shadameba, Timumeba, the legend in Yamlin, Chebaina. And you magic soon, you might need so you must custom the com and soon a lead and it's around soon too. I know what in that kind of job of the pie by the issue jobs in it. And you more that coordinate by that same the give it all take it up. And give it all a devil in and don't age wagging. Don't age wagging, Langard, Paka, don't age to yourself, never check to yourself what the girls are like yourself or your mother. Said that soon as the Namdo to get it. Machaba. Then she had done that Timo to do the number to do the seminar to young some ever saw or come back what Jam the command on Saramotina, she sent Kotokatuna, and it demoting young woman, demoting my own, and then all of Dunge. Never Dunge Seva, Dunge Shiva chair, that tabby, and then all of Rabares, as a tea. That's same soon as the digital call, then to the water. Yes, one.
Conscientiousness then gives us the contours for practice each day. That is, where we have developed the mind of enlightenment, we then go on to preserve it, and we preserve it each day in our every activity. When we eat without a growing desirous attachment, without aversion, without any ignorance. And in this way we eat. And as we go about in motion, we go about in this way without mental afflictions, without great desire, without pride in ourselves, without ignorance, and whatever the activity we are engaged in, we do it without desire, without pride. And as we do so, we gain in ability to do just this until we are very able to. This is the process of conscientiousness for the elimination of the mental afflictions, such that a time comes when we are naturally occupied in constructive and virtuous activities, for the very door, the very access into our activities for the mental afflictions has been firmly closed. There is no way anymore for ignorance, aversion, desirous attachment to access us, for we have been implementing our conscientiousness. All of the access points are closed. Mental afflictions are annulled entirely. And this is then to have come by the method for the elimination of mental affliction.
Oh, yeah. So to that, you know, Manzogita, yeba, meba, dewata, diba, wata, diba, say a jota. And in the Diogota, dewata, dunge, say that is Zuganga Karisna, that the judge said that Timu want to Yobaina, Rangi Semdi, the judge said that Timu want to know what the Yamdo draw in, Togocha Dena, and then Dipare, and then go Pameva Chatter. Or could you do near it? That thing is a palm map and Pameva, not high Yobadi, Peja Machava, and Shedan Meva, Timu Meva, Naje Meva, Tato Meva, or Zuka Kare, Yoba, Kewa, could you do with Kare? Dewa, or the distance, or the get rattle for us.
Then conscientiousness as opposed to negligence, virtue as opposed to non-virtue. These are the alternatives. And there's a further alternative too: sorrow and satisfaction. Where the mind is entirely under the sway of desirous attachment and aversion and ignorance, it has fallen into the camp of non-virtue. It is negligent. The natural result is to experience sorrows. Conscientiousness, on the other hand, is non-desirousness, is non-aversion, it's non-pridefulness. The natural results of these states of mind are contentment. This is what we must come to comprehend.
Macha shedan timu max. Macha shedan timu me. Ejil leni yawate. Teacher leni yawate. Ejil leni yawate. Ejil leni yawate. Yawale gele yendo tamje dance. Yawale ani jebu kare yendo dewa yendo topures. And Jawa could do yours. Like Jawa the terror comes in. 아니 그 저거들이 깨워서라 돌리고 밤이 고마도 배워지게 돌려와 뭐 되듯이 물리로 쓰기를 손으로 세다 아 어두단다 밤에 매바다 바 이어봤어요 땅도 즉 공도사도 물리로 쓰 이제 저는 쓰기 어려서 지금
And now we can draw from the illustrious Nagarjuna, who spoke in the precious garland in this way: non-desirousness, non-aversion, non-ignorance. These lead to contentment. These are virtues, and virtues lead to fortunate rebirths. This fortune is experienced in all lives to come. So said Nagarjuna, meaning from non-aversion, non-desirousness, non-ignorance, one experiences every contentment. Conscientiousness and negligence, in the outline that we give them here, find their scriptural support in Nagarjuna's precious garland.
right 그죠 오야 다들 제가 먼저 단다 동도 드린 주제 찍듯이 가르쳐야는 바유다 밤에서 모두 지어버렸디 모시야 되다 대충 버렸어 바유다 바유가 쟤는 대화 토비야 밤에 버치는 동행 토비야 본이 나가 또 차대요 그래서 근데 뭘 쳐봐지나 아니 니만님하게 냠내 나와 아니 가르쳐봐 있나야 바유 줘봐 치도야 밤에 줘봐 송도야 내지기면 내 지도원이나 아니 당한도 내주 상상 줘야 그러 친구 자야 돼 내주 차버려 손시
So then it would be like that, wouldn't it? And this is, to put it concisely then, and for an hour we have dwelled upon conscientiousness and negligence. Conscientiousness and negligence because of their importance. Where there is conscientiousness, there will be contentment. Where there is negligence, great sorrow. There are then two ways, and we would be wise to comprehend them. Then each day, having understood this, we may practice with conscientiousness, and in so doing, improve our fortunes.
오야 딱 내려 딱 내가도 다 바유 때문에 미국에 당부도 땡숑도 어디 계산하고 내가 담아들 뜻이 제가 그 당부디 제외세지 대답부 장주 셈sem럽 장주 세럽 땡송네 어디 받아서 지금도 바유 때에서 당분이 이제 디네 아니 첨바다 시식 대한 저도들 예와 매베 다도 양 랍레 멘다 베버 차스 이게 첨바다 시식 땡기와 같은 것도 쉬사로 와서
In our final class, several weeks ago, we opened the chapter with the first verse, which describes in general terms conscientiousness, concisely conscientiousness. The first two lines: the children of the conqueror who thus have firmly grasped this bodhicitta, contains ethical discipline and conscientiousness. While the final two lines: should never turn aside from it, strive never to transgress its discipline, describes mindfulness and vigilant introspection.
오야 다시 당분이 다른 전달만 단주 본지 휴에는 대달의 야세 장주쌤 장주고 쌤 개념이 줄라 개외세 그리고 어디에 장주쌤 대도 개념이 되도게 아니 장주고 쌤니다 장주고 쌤 뭐선다 조선 장주초도 쌤제 아니 동발랑 그래체고 되게 아니 쌤니보테 냐바메바 딱 때벌 손에 이지기는 바 이지장 바 요와 마지막 아니 쌤 마냐바 마제발 아니 버진 토다 뇌 나머시 냠lela 메요진 냐바 송아 제그레스 어떻게 담보데 들으서 말하다.
Then to repeat these lines: the children of the conqueror who thus have firmly grasped this bodhicitta are the heirs to the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas, who have developed the mind of enlightenment. They have developed the mind of enlightenment in aspiration and in engagement through the formal vows too. Then they make this stable, have firmly grasped this bodhicitta, should never turn aside from it, strive never to transgress its disciplines. So the mind must be made stable so that for not even a fleeting moment is it ever lost. To this end, the 6 paramitas and the 4 means of gathering disciples are practiced.
Oh, yeah, that is a chambata. You know, significantly chambata. And Shishingi, and Lavish, you said, Labale, Kijijang, Rangi Sole, Cheba Zini, and Mindawa Chigres, Kijijang, Kamachi Nayani, Mindawa Chigres, so Chigres. Just our 60 Kadu or just
should never turn aside from it, strive never to transgress its disciplines, describes mindfulness and vigilant introspection that is maintained continuously, where there is not even a moment's lapse allowed. One preserves the mind of enlightenment, even at the risk of one's life, even faced with sacrificing one's life. One preserves it and doesn't allow it to lapse for even a minute.
Oh, yes, that, and you do any Chanju Sem Kebata, and Dobalama Tela, Kijian, but Mio Suma Chigres. Kadi Sundan, Kadi Sungres, na, and the Rangi Solid and Jeba Sungres. Oh, yes, you do the Mata, solid Jeba Sins to the Mat. So, in Azu Sodi, Azu Mizina, Suke Sod, but Sachi Tigre. Yes, that was. I saw Jebers, that she would do Jessica on Zidona. Go saw Jebers, that saw Sachin, she would see it was. Oh, she don't saw the Sachin would see it. See, and see where you did it. I don't saw the Chimba in music. That's over those labor, that teaching on the Mizidina, the saw the Sachi Sigaros. Says that they did saw the Sachin would did it Sigiyina, and saw the Sachin would Tola Chimbaina on the Mizic Tola Chimbares. That under Sanju Sembek, Lava Suma, the Rangi Masuma Chene, any Chibaina, saw then the Ya Dong in the Tola Chimbaleja, and the Panga Chagi or Esmus.
Should never turn aside from it, strive never to transgress its disciplines. Where the mind of enlightenment has arisen, the formal vow has been taken, then one maintains the mind of enlightenment as one must, and the way in which one must is to value it more highly than one values even one's life. That is to say, whereas generally there is nothing more valuable to any person than their own life, and when one loses their life, when one is murdered, we see it as a great shame that the person has lost that which is most valuable to them. But where there's one life that is lost, it is just that, one life, and no more that is lost. But where ethical discipline lapses, it is 100 lifetimes and then 1,000 lifetimes of ramifications of the lapse, and even more, meaning then that maintaining the mind of enlightenment is immeasurably more valuable than one's life.
Oh, that is some of the Zambata, and this Mizidi said they saw the Gadi, Sechik never chowers. And you send Beggy, Labadu, Suma, Kelama Denzo, and Rangi Masuma Chevaina, and it gave up Mango, gave out a setup, and in Tola Tower, the Serata, when you got the Jala, the Mazun, Jewijato, the Zendo, the seminar, so as Kevo was. Sedanta, Sanju, Sem Kelambati, Rangi Masuma Yina. And Kiawa Sarah Mango Ringla, and Milu Tobiaki Kogate Yomare, and it in a Kogi, Peggy Kandar Masu, Yabala Tene, and Sarah Mambo, Kiawa Mambo, and a song then 거 차그래 제가 대대인이 아니 달래 밀루직 이 가지소 마치마 대바 있나요? 로자르스 아니 장주 선배에게 라바 마송와 있나? 아니 로자된데 반드시 송을 내가 제바 있나? 아니 미기 로 앞주 주줄라 네 송와도 좀 이만직 로직로 되게 망아 여러 제가 대대인이 마주게 미치직 촐라치 바데다 장주선 마송 촐라치 바이부디 베 주는데 가서 그서 지에 여마르스 제위 잡투야 여마르스 제가 근데 아니 장주선 송을 배우되 뭐시 몇 번에 아니 바유지 번에 저거 송투와데 배우되 뭐시 뭐잖아 아니 가서 랍치 뭐 여래서 뭐
Losing one's life in the present life is a loss of just one life. When one has deliberately taken the Boddhisattva vows and fails to observe them, the consequences play out for eons, many, many lifetimes. One ought to weigh the difference as though we were looking at two objects and weighing them for their weight, to find and feel the difference in seriousness of losing a life versus transgressing a Bodhisattva vow. That latter having consequences playing out for many lifetimes. One of those consequences being that one will not have the fortune of inheriting a precious human rebirth. And the faults of the transgression will have their consequences for many lifetimes as one is born in the hell realms. When one inherits a precious human rebirth, at most one lives 100 years. When one transgresses Bodhisattva vows, one falls into the hell realms where 100 years, 100 human years is a mere day in the life of a hell being. So there is no comparing, exchanging, or replacing these Bodhisattva vows, that they are so much more valuable than one's life, ought to be understood so that one practices with conscientiousness in all of their activities.
뭐야 되게 상대들이 셰대야 되게 공도 lungi 공도 어디 이게 딜도 땡에 다들 도대 땡에 제보 거기 여러 데나 다들 이 친구 가려서 아니면 친구 와도 가도 아무 곳 가도 알레 와는 틈다 터다 동다 저바 소스 숨 저바 소스 예외 추수 주가 강의 봐 군지자와 바유 바유 뒤인데 아니 같이 양지 라스
때를 더
알레 때도 제바 제진 아니 대화 섹스 저다디 공도사게 산지 좀 되게 숨고 되는 두고 열에서
The emphasis on conscientiousness has its scriptural support in the Samadhi Raja Sutra. Ethical discipline and learning and generosity, patience, and all that conduces to contentment. They find their root in conscientiousness. It secures the greatest treasury, and one proceeds to the state of the Sugata.
나 당고 바지 당고 좀 챙기냐네 아니 랑이 터바다 싸바다 곰바 아니 동아서 집에냐면 쇠배냐면 오다 대달라 소베 바지 쪽이냐면 아주 생각이 냐면 갈리지 임바 있나야 아니 개외치 겨와레 디 그래서야다 치어 갈리지 임바 있나야 다 꾸이 아니 치어서 줘야게 쭉 가는 거라서 바유 디징고레스 바유 디 여바 있나 아니 때르니에만 하시 아유디 여바이나 아니 가리요레스 저 땅에나 때리냐고 나시요레스 때리냐나 아니 수수배다 강에 뭐 상투로 강에 뭐 강에 가리는 세투로 어디나 빼지 않는 송고요레스
The verse indicates that ethical discipline, listening, contemplation, and meditation, generosity, patience, the 6 paramitas, all the charya of the Bodhisattva, whatever form they take, they become the dharma of the Bodhisattvas, where they are rooted in conscientiousness. This conscientiousness is indispensable. Where one possesses it, one possesses a treasury, a mine, a very mind that may be mine for dispelling and eliminating every sorrow.
야, 말하는 수술도 삼모당 수술 때리신 분이 녀바이나 아니 랑게다 강에 가져 세두 살에 랑 가르치 하살 수술 가와 간지 영살에 강에 가르치 세두 살에 대 수술랑 수술 삼로 나라 녀 두야 지러 왔어 아니 빼잖아 빼 가르치하스나 바다디 시에디 가돌다 아니 빼제 가리는다 유라마 이나치나 이 지나다 바다 미지기다 뭐 강에 전부다 대리되는 결혼 미지기 때 승무시에 미지기 결혼 가르치는 데를 셈비시기 강에 그 결혼이 대사가 사도 뭐다 디오를 때르디에는 야모는 결혼이 강에 가면 세트 그래서 강에 가면 세트 그래서 제가 디나실 따고 강에 가는 식 쇠셔주 강에 뭐지 아니 세미나 수수다 강에 유대주디 아니 수수를 때가도 전부지라고 빼는 누구도 지라고 있나 아니 누구들 그게 답을 잡을 때는 하다 랑기다 디도 가르세 세투로 와 디나시 다다 바요 디자 말라 때네 아니 랑기 말사도 동에 이나야 다도 그래 다다 지주 마음벌에네 동에 사도 사기 말에 아니 사와서 다와시래 어떻게 그 때를 침번하시래 손으로
Consider conscientiousness a veritable mine for you that you may use to fix all that is problematic in your life. Wherever there's sorrow, imagine if you were to come to possess great wealth, for instance, if you were to inherit a mineral mine, a precious mine, what would that allow you to do? What of your problems would you be able to address with that great wealth? Just think about that, what it would mean for you to come into possession of something that yields so much. And I don't know if it is from the Uttara Tantra or elsewhere, but there a metaphor is used. A person is despondent and feels as though they have nothing at all. They have an acquaintance who finds them in this state and says, why do you mope this way? Go home and dig under your hearth and you find that you have a mind there. Do that and that will remedy all your problems. Of these problems we are beset with, so too do we have a mine of jewels that we may mine that will allow us to fix all that is problematic for us. Conscientiousness is this mind. Conscientiousness is this mind. It is a mind that allows the correction of all non-virtues that have been accumulated. They may be eliminated through conscientiousness. Furthermore, no new non-virtues will be engaged in by the force of conscientiousness. Any non-virtues that remain are purified by the force of conscientiousness.
that in a drink that subject of Karsana Chanju similar. That on that Chanjuji similar, are you gom goba? Chanju rang that and the Chanju stem here about the Tombalama de Lani, are you sem goba? Chanju lava la Payu goba, all the shake subject that Dilla Tamodella, are you goba de la Chanju sem Tordu Mirua in Saint Torve Nimi? That the Nane Chanju sem Tordu Miru in Saint Sheadilla. 아니 가레스나 자와디 법주 잠바 가이바 간시 레벌 마다바 빈니 탐제 제조장 참 당시 따바리 어디 자와디 잠주sem다 도르 미루에 윤신시야기다 찌데레 손스
in an overall outline of the chapter, we discuss the mind of enlightenment in terms of the conscientiousness that must be applied when the mind of enlightenment has arisen, the formal vows have been taken, and one endeavors to preserve the mind of enlightenment. Then arguments follow. The reason why it is not right to discard the mind of enlightenment, and the disadvantage of discarding conscientiousness and the mind of enlightenment. So then the second verse, whatever was begun without due heed, and all that was not properly conceived, although a promise and a pledge were given, it is right to reconsider. Shall I act or not?
간제 법슈 잡아 강이 마음 세상부터기 다 저간 원수 지dengi 하나도 지도 난게 아니 제 내가 간리지 버이나야 교회다 연대 따봐 맞아 봐 법주 잡도 잡아 가이 봐 법주스 따서 주는 맞아 버세네 아니 다 내가 간 제와대 강이 봐 일라 아니 간시 레벨 아니 저 간시 저 니스가 제가 따지 주는 교회다 해다 총기 따지 주는 맞아 버세네 아니 자와 제바 직세 양 자와 강시를 중세 제바 제자 제바 야보 맞아 따바 야보 맞아 버세네 제바 이나 양 아니 내가 가르치는 테니 아니 제바 이나 양 콜라야 아니 녀바 요바 베스 나는 지도나 콜라다 거기 내가 들라랑 뭐 제바 주는 맞제바게 그냥 해 간다한테 캐 말아봐 종라야 직접 나 저와 관심이야 라는 제바 제유나 양 제바 야고 맞집에 오기 아니 수술로 배 종라야다 해 말아야 돼 요구 도와서 어다 데데 요구 요바 이나스 안 다다 가서 배다 수술에 캐네 밤잡을 데데게 저와 찍라 나는 두세도 지금 걸 간다 데데 딱지 제바 딱지 최대 맞체니 아니 밖에다 자와 제조가 직세 야 딱제로 레벨 맞으거든요 자와 저들이 가르 제와 이나야 그 자와 제조디 수수기 디차리기 다체 디차리기 말은 봐줄래 따나야 디그레스 예바 칸요 말스 딱콜라 수수기 다 간다 내가 마주마비 예바도 좀도 개요 말스 나 단다 장주 쌤기디 다 수수기 개래 아니 대야베 다 쉬우지 수수 담보 제바체 제바체 아니 제바체네 아니 다 간다 다 장주쌤이 표현시 아니 시에네 단도 아니 되게 장주쌤 되게 땅와이나 아니 하장이 예바치 뭐 이거 땡기 어려서 세부도
써보셔서. Whatever was begun without due heed, and all that was not properly conceived. In ordinary undertakings, some things are begun, though not well considered. Consequences of planning are not examined. There's no due diligence. There's no evaluation of profit and loss ahead of time. And then one starts and meets with losses. So there's these two possibilities. Whatever one has begun without due heed, and all that was not properly conceived, or heed was given, but it wasn't sufficient. In these two cases, without due heed or with too little heed, one meets with great losses. Although a promise and a pledge were given, it is right to reconsider. Shall I act or not? We can look at it this way. A person may examine what they are setting out to do, or they may not. And when they do not, and they meet with losses, then it's fair to reevaluate. But here we have a different situation. The project is the very mind of enlightenment itself, and it has been examined. The benefits have been understood.
But then if the due diligence and the heedfulness that led to the arising of the mind of enlightenment were then to be discarded, the consequences would be much more severe than this worldly example given here.
다 장주섬 도로에 있는 이미시야 된다는 사비디 오마든 거라 산제 남다 대세 셔럽 전부 강다시 다니기야 따따베 벨라 쇼도 지시여 어디다 장주섬 따 이미 시기어래 소스.
So then follows a description of the disadvantage of discarding such a mind. Verse 3, yet what the Buddhas and their heirs have scrutinized in their great wisdom, I myself have probed and scrutinized. Why should I now procrastinate?
다 이들 presentation 이미 들었다 이 스케치 무시하고 가시요. 제가 드린 저한테는 나샤나 야사레스. 아니 이미 있다 롱다 리베고네. 아니 장주섬 토르메로 와도 데스 윤세시에 망부여래. 아니 생이지라지만 시에 좋아지스. 드린 거는 바이에다 밤에 있고라야 그래서 니들이 좋아하는 지금 영용체에다 드린 돈을 저한테는 데서나 카세를 줘야 그래요. 일단 저한테는 지금 드린 대상이 손수.
Then maybe here is a good place to leave off for now, as we have arrived at a description of the disadvantages of discarding the mind of enlightenment. And there are related arguments and scriptural support to lend force to this, that it is a great disadvantage to discard the mind of enlightenment, which we can follow up on next week. And at this moment, we might best use our time in question and answer, so that all we have covered in conscientiousness and negligence, how it might apply in daily life, may be given greater clarity. So we may use our question and answer in that way. So if you have a question, please share it. If you have some doubt, share that. No.
Well, I mean, perhaps mistakes will be made along the way. Maybe not complete abandonment or abandonment at all. Mistakes due to, I don't know, habits. And in those cases, with the antidote, the powers of the antidotes be the practice we should implement, and at those times, or is there is there a different practice when we maybe transgress some things we understand? So.
Dine tujiche, dine pelcher maomba di simdi dor menayam ani neba dine jung sigirwa dor mena di simdi bede dorgi menayam dor menayam ra sim bede dor menayam neba dine jung sigire neba labna di tongwa karla Neva dende jongsigre. Neva dende jongsigre. Ani bede dorgi menayam. Simdi bede dor menayam. Neva dende jongsigre. That dende jongna. Di neva di meba zoyala. Yamene meba zoyala. Ani neva top shi di tengorve yamena. Ani neva di sanyala. Meba zoyala. Ani tablam shimba yorve.
그 내 당보와 내 당보 인도 담바다 냠면지도 담바 코 더시발레 아니 돌아래 규진 망보여레스 되게 다 인도 담바 그래서 내가 중앙이나 나처럼 들어왔던 만나시 탑 약쇼데 이것도 없이 제 도와야 됐다 두개 탑 쳐도 기발에 이것도 없이 되고 그 시험받지는 냠면시 샤바체 바이나 아니 다티바 나신 티바 샤야라다 뭐도 지티냐 버서 상고야래 이도 좀 고때는 샤나 약효들에 숨기지 아니 야 거기 또 무슨다 계획이 아니 예바든게 임바이나 뭐 치주죠. 치주죠.
No.
네, 그거는 소다를 돈 받을 계획이나 아니 전부 거기 김대우통도 샤워와 야로 김대우통도 샤워를 아 전주선도 돈 받을 계획이 와이나는 소주 산재 탐지 기장을 샤워를 아니 돈 받을 계획이 예바이나는 아니 도지 탐기 도지 로병을 통도 아니 샤워스 뭐와 어디서 신한 지가 개침부여래서
Now, as a beginner, even discarding this mind is conceivable. Now, then if a fault arises, though, whatever fault does arise, yes, the application of the antidote powers is the best means for addressing the transgression. So one understands the antidote powers and how to apply them in confessing. And this will address negativities that are negative by nature, too. Furthermore, where formal vows are held by a person, the formal vows and any transgression to them are mended in a formal ritual ceremony of a particular kind. For the pratimoksha vows, that ceremony, mending ceremony, must take place before the abbot. For the mending of the bodhisattva transgressions to the bodhisattva vows, the ceremony must be held before the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. The Mantrayana vows are addressed before the Vajradhara preceptor, the Vajra master. Did that speak to your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any others?
In like implementing conscientiousness, I find that often I'm kind of relying on the body a lot. It's kind of like body sensations, like feeling into if there's harm or aggression just through like tightening these things. And when I try to think, my mind gets very discursive, kind of overthinking. So I was curious if Geshe-la has kind of like simple thoughts or simple reflections that are useful to kind of have a more maybe analytical way to maintain conscientiousness, in addition to kind of just relying on more like intuitive body sensations.
Namgyun, Bayu Tindi Tsambala, Marangi Drotang Kandishi Relabna, Bayu Tindi Tsambala, Sosugi Lula, Tsoro Gari Jung Majung, Tila Tagyo. And the Shedan the Kedu and Shedangi Tsoro, and the Terjaki Keti Zambala Terjaki Tsoro. Then the Sosugi Lugi Tsoro la Tagin, ne Bayu. Sung yoda meti ane hagoyo yore mayin bayina yesi kete ngegi ane simgi tachi chene simgi tachi chevi kingi namdo te mauru drogudu izani geshi la kanri shuye gari yosana tab devo chene kayo layo gi samlo kerso 양면나 삼로 땅땅 바이오 텐데 잠발라 삼로 덴데 땅나 바이오 따따 텐토바 덴데 라보 요나 주기요
야 그래서 먼저 곰 잡두 이네 다 아니 즉 내가 고축도 이네 가르치 뭐 이네 당부 내가 고축도 곰전이 있나요 곰저도 남도 숙취를 주냐 저 어떻게 이 곰 대신 저도 대가랑 시기래스 직제 내가 로 있는 너무 고속도 뭐 내가 너가 지니도 망아 도와다 요 망아 요부터 요래스 이처럼 섬 땅다데 섬로 땅외 아니 다진지 해제 요 땅으로 섬들 대송세계 아니 이발라
Well, to begin with, in meditation, in any project whatsoever, invariably at the beginning, there will be more thought involved, and there will be more problems at the outset. It is said of meditation practice that in the beginning, there will be more discursive thought. So this, to begin with, is related to what you mentioned here.
아주 사이 신의가 지금아 네 루시바가 탈래그래 용아발레그래 다 신의 검주시하고 신의 검역이 주다 신의 검주 샘플 버드 시한데 아무 신의 검역이 고주도 샘 신의라 두파 미벌 샤바다 남도 배 망을 두니 되고치 이어가겠다 대시네 그렇지랑 랜디 버드마 패세올 리그레스.
In addition, at the end of the 4th chapter and in the 5th chapter, where quiescent meditation techniques are described, cause for quiescent or stabilization meditation and the very mind itself in stabilization meditation, it is said at the outset of these meditations, when one first places the mind on its object of meditation, then discursive thought does increase.
남 삼수 당도 잠반 아니 선나 남도 많은 것도 그래서 다디 세상다 아토모텔 가르 코스나 소와데도 다녀 숨데라 루술 코제게 소와데도 다녀 숨 샘술 코제게 소와데도 다녀 숨 베이직 모두 지치고래 해서.
Now, moving to your question that having to do with when thought is used to engage in conscientiousness, that thinking increases discursivity. All right, that's how I understood it. And we need to understand sensation generally as bodily sensation that is pleasurable, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And similarly, mental sensation that is pleasure, that is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral.
예. 근데 이제 다 아주 단다 그제 뜻이 이제 바위에다 대서 그 뜻이 잡이온데 아주 망세 샘절 코지 소화대도 다녀 숨이 소화대 축치어 그저 당고 열에세 그러 예 그래 제가 되게 이제 땅 아주 바위 땐세다 저랑 다다 소화되나라 아니 이치도로 삼도 땅 되어 가지고 열에 세죠 어때 니나 다 담보 수수 꿀는 게 있잖아요 아니 내가 되게 지금 이 지금에 이 지기 이상의 수수고 내가 지도 고마주고는 꿀lungu 토는 뒤치나 밤에 이 뒤치나 바위에 있으면 꿀lungu 토는 제법이나 아니 내가 망고지 까투 그래 아니 내가 망고지 그런 거 대선로 땅 왔지 내가 차도야 이 닥치도 야고 열어서 뭐지 아무 꿀lungu 토는 삼로 땅에 수수 뒤 너를 뒤뒤를 삼는 삼모는 땅에 내가 제법이나 망고지
Now, in the explanation of conscientiousness, conscientiousness does take part especially in mental sensation that is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, more than physical sensation. Now, to speak directly to your question, what easier means, what means might there be to engage in thought that doesn't increase discursivity unnecessarily? The strategy is best to begin deliberately with the intention, which is, I will do this and this in this way before one begins. And to recognize that one is proceeding to avoid negligence and follow conscientiously. Now, when this at the outset, this establishing of an intention happens, then that eliminates a lot of the thought that would necessarily come from it. Much of the mental activity is taken care of at the outset in establishing the intention regarding what is constructive, following from conscientiousness, and what that is problematic following from negligence.
간다 쌤이 공부된 직체 니체 숨체 하고 쌤이 공도 아니 내가 가리나야 강에 매봐 아니 그 주투야 여봐 되게 쌤이 공부하는 거 온게 쉽자고 그래서
This is the process of accustoming the mind to something that is introduced to it or exercised in it a first time and then a second time and then a third time, to the point where the mind is so familiar, so accustomed to it, that it engages in it naturally without any problems. And this is the process.
아니 걔네가 그 사무 근데 오바잡고 있나 아니 걔도 좋은 사무 하고 사무 땅도 버렸어 아 여봐지나 걔 가려 아 매버지나 좋은 가려 이 저기 잡시 봐 아니 사무 땅 투가 있나 아니 그 남산 섬나 텐트가 제발 내야 돼 그 걔도 좋은 데 또 숙잡고 버렸어
One goes in a stepwise manner. First, considering profit and loss, benefits, advantages and disadvantages, advantages of conscientiousness, disadvantages of negligence, and then firmly, deliberately makes the exchange to increase conscientiousness. And then one is deliberate so that later one hasn't got to reflect anymore.
그다음에 총장이지 미송 사무당들이 미지 총을 협상해 보더나 총 가지는 깔리지 그 총을 협상을 하고 지금 그나시 미지 로종 타네랑 그 개변라고 이거 통도 로종 쉽게 정도 꼭 가서는 아주 뭐 유익이 캐드 통고 이거이나 아니 거기 될 자와대로 죽는 깔리지 그거 어떻게 거라고
Really no different than a business venture that one throws themselves into when they see the profits in store, and no different from the student who throws themselves into their study, seeing the benefits that will come from an understanding. In the same way, finding the advantages of conscientiousness, one is thrown into conscientiousness.
그다음에 장중이 쌤한테 돈이 들었다 제주고 이게 나는 시야게 제부가가 개변가가 뭐밖에 개변자냐 시기 여러 왔어. 그래서 다 뭐밖에 개변 통이 있나? 안 걸로 좀 지기래. 뭐밖에 개변 마통 있나? 안 거기들 돈안 내고 말하면 로좀 지도고 말아 왔어. 그래서 다 뭐 제부도 통. 이제 자와를 전 아니 자와도 영향을 타고 있는데 이게 강같이 근데 지기로 와 근데 집 강같이 벌어 왔어.
It's everywhere the same in Bodhicitta, in terms of bodhicitta, in terms of the wisdom realizing emptiness, and all the topics of the Bodhicharya Avatara, the way of the Bodhisattva. One first takes sight of the result, sees clearly what is spoken of as the results that come in the future, and especially they are future results. Seeing them clearly, the advantages and benefits to come as result, one studies. One has taken sight of the result and engages then having done so.
가지고 가고 계산 들려고만 시작했다. 세딜러 땅 왔다 자주 숨러 땅 와니디 제부터 두고 말해 군이 그 제두르시다 요 말았어 이 라이버스 제가 그 개변 통이나 그 제부터 두고로 왔어. 개변 통면은 세딜러 땅에 거기 제부 가 두고 말았어. 다다 그 제부 통마 통그 전에 It's
just as the verse I mentioned, where one is urged to protect the mind of enlightenment even at the cost of one's life, which is inconceivable when one hasn't taken sight of any result, where one hasn't seen the benefits of the mind of enlightenment. It is inconceivable that something would be more valuable than one's life. But where one has firmly sighted the result, then one is motivated by having seen that result.
거기 개변이 통나 내가 가리 있는 지도 깔래 요 말에 제두를 지기래. 제부도 마통나 안 내가 그 제부 잡두고 말에 지게 제 누발리 말와. 제가 다 간다 당다 수수 콜라 대부지 통네 아니 자와되는 주거디 야제 고고 그러다 지금 이제 뭐 저 제부 못하는 제 대대지 영식으로 가서 어디를 뭐 저것인다 이 말이야.
Then it is the awareness of the result or the lack of awareness of the result that determines so much. Where the result is understood, then anything whatsoever may be undertaken and even seen to completion. One is able to see it to completion by having seen the result. But where there's no notion of any result to follow, then one simply cannot engage in anything. There's no carrying to any fruition, having never seen in advance the result. So then to see the result and comprehend the result in advance is 99% of the project. Perhaps 1% or 2% might be motivated by something different than an understanding of results to follow. Any other questions? If no other questions, then we'll close with our prayers. Then we have to close with prayers.
간다 단다 동서들이 바 여봐다 바 내봐 생기가 대시 잡아냈어. 일단 바 여봐 생기데 나는 대진복한데 이미 나 밤에 제나 예바친복한서 이미 한다 되니만 다 되는 거죠. 걸 내가 링주 좀 시해봐래 사인당이 되지만다 못하는 걸 시해오래스. 어때도 이두자마다 먼저 바유기 줘봐도 왜 수십을 숨기니 밤에 줘봐 지금에 밤에 제나 아니 랑이 이제 이자마자 치마를 때 동행이 연거야. 아 옆에 제발 라바이나 세 딜라양 랑랑 송교 지토가 아니 세 치마 남술라 이나양 내주 상호 때 줘야게 때 이마디 아니 내주 다른 퇴바디 쳔베 맞제바 아니 맞제바 쳔베기 얌슬랑바디 랑이 셈나 줄 자는 공중이 요한테 뭐 The
topic we have been concerned with has been conscientiousness and negligence. Conscientiousness and negligence. How it is that conscientiousness is so valuable, how it is that negligence is so pernicious. And this has been a preamble to what is to come, and we will continue. But having heard now of the advantages of conscientiousness, the drawbacks of negligence, we firmly commit ourselves then to practicing with conscientiousness, to allowing no negligence to creep in, to maintaining the awareness that where one is negligent, then the consequences are sorrows spanning eons. But where one is conscientious, one is assured of increasing prospects for contentment, ever increasing. So now that we have heard of it, conscientiousness, I have heard of it. I hear of it, conscientiousness, and understand the situation. I'll remember the value of conscientiousness. Furthermore, I will meditate to create an experiential understanding of conscientiousness's value.
Oh, yeah, I'm not doing that. I didn't matter about the shishi, Colomashia, and come out some system to come out to Ezona, Aposita Yoras, but in my senior to Yakita, senior to Yakita, Antokata, Chambat Tankoya, and Shishin Lagachikoya. Or Tilaten, Tamashine to do, and it's in to be a Situlan, Gaging, Chiwata, Goba, and it didn't buy Chiwata Goba, and Chiwata singing Martha, then we say chat or the leg Mangoyor, and this one also Gomu Jagi, and he Namjong Jes. The globes and of the same Junta, Sem the same Jungola, Namshama, Leon, and it is about Tanya Mango South, and it didn't. On the Lobzento, that's my ships out to back, and then on the 10 days. From the Tangi years, 근데 강가로 샘 중부치는 됐다. 공적 접구에 장야도 들려 너 통한체는 아니 대스펜도 요즘 챙기도 제가 아니 데데데 시기 있 아니 드링아도 아 바이오도 밤에기 표현시해 발라 때네 아니 뭐는 잡아 가래스나 아 뭐는 당부디 선진 탐제라 선진 간다까지 랑다 저 여봐 랑다 저 매봐 아니 랑아 파게 다 지금 야다 얘기 내가 매베 발마 가리 마이나야 대다 선제 탐제 랑이 많이 뭐 찍바 찍야래 대탐제라 동해 민중아 대화 중아 아니 제제 아니 니바디 만화도 다 잠불린 고유 대대주 다 배년가 차워 배 선제는 강에 침보를 대주가가 파시야 숨바디 대시야게 치돌라 아니 지금 산제게 대바 선제니 배 선제게 디지 용하라 아니 산제게 대바 선제 매도 메롱아 오 대리기 치고는 아니 뭐하면 지나 아니 뭐하면 죽친구 차기를 했어 오 대리 치고도 해서 뭐지
Next week, as we look into conscientiousness and vigilant introspection, we will do so also meditating for 3 or 4 minutes as we go. And as one practices shamatha meditation, one uses mindfulness and vigilant introspection as techniques for shamatha, quiescent meditation, or tranquility meditation. During such meditations, 2 principal faults will arise: the fault of excess laxity, and excitement, these 2. We will consider shamatha in terms of intensity and clarity. We will be meditating, and I think then, as we are meditating, if we go into the details of mental factors involved and begin to think in terms of the terminology used to describe the mind as it is meditating, this will be constructive for us. So I think that's what we will do, learn this terminology too. Now, the purpose of dedicating virtue through prayer, in the case here where we have considered negligence and conscientiousness, the purpose of the dedication prayer is threefold. First, all sentient beings, the ones with whom we have a direct connection, and those with whom we have no connection, those who are friends and those who are enemies, and then those who are unknown to us, strangers to us, all sentient beings, one and all alike, desire contentment and wish to avoid sorrow. This is the first feature. The second is the world at large, shared with all sentient beings, is a treacherous place filled with dangers for sentient beings, and we wish to bring ease and well-being to sentient beings. To this end, then, the third feature of a dedication prayer, that the Dharma remains steadfastly, for it is the means by which the travails of sentient life may be addressed and pacified. So we dedicate our virtue here in this way with these 3 features so that it may be the most forceful sort of dedication prayer.
Rendo belle soye ye kadara yamba kanshi saba lome mare je don rowa ye namre jave hombo da je ema sumbe zera gundu yang jande yang je sewe je Debe rimba kuzan lamge jo nyene chube genom nye jo Rangi jishin tobe lanje ne shudra tsewe chanwe tabge ji Rowe yiji muba seje ne gyawe tenpa yunrin zengyu ji
Tembo Rinche Choge Majaba Jabyan Yamba Gyurwe Chole Nije Chimbu Yira Gyaba Yi Pende Deje Sawar Cheba Sho Seje Gyave Mejun Chile Le Chu Chanju Lamji Rambe Hade Namji Yila Pede Gyave Seba Rengu Pyongyeruchi Gaza Dube Tungen Luche Gege Seje Medani Sera Kundu Yahweh Mapa Yi Namda Lambda Jawara Makerish Kaze Teba Jola Juju Tsuji Dula Tumba Deise Tude Nage Tadum Goje Tashi Gyatsu Tugun Gyagye. From my two collections, vastest space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my life and manjushri. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means strong by the strong force of compassion. May I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned. May I uphold Buddha's teaching for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined. May I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all the human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.
Gage Jenye Sambe Gewadi Tendang Roa Kuna
Gam
Chebara Jesu Losang Rabayi Tembe Yingbo Ringdu Seji Sho Kare Rabbe Kurwe Shingamde Pendang Dewa
Madu Shungwe
Shere Sewan Tenzi Gyatso Yi Shabe Sidi Baradu Tengyuruchi Yabe Bawo Jiru Kemba Dang Kundu Sambo Teyan
Dejente
Dela Kunji Jesu Talo Che Jewa Dinda Tamje Rabu Tuso Shere Jewa Tamje Je Moa Kanda Shodu Napa Daje Jewe Tsawa Digu Sambo Cheje Rabu Moa Jaru Sancho Remboche
Maite Bana Tigurichi Yewa Nyamba Meba Kone Kondu Bewar. I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapwa to shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful as it is in Gyatso, please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantha Bhadra do, realize things as they are. Also, I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue, with a dedication praised as the best, by the victorious Laskan ones of the three times, so that I might perform the noble Boddhisattva deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhisattva that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Good night, everybody. As you lay down to rest, conscientiousness. As you rise, conscientiousness.
as you go about your activities, conscientiousness, such that for not even an instant is there a lapse in your conscientiousness.
Yeah. Yeah.